This episode of Where Did the Road Go is brought to you in part by our Patreons. In particular, this month is being sponsored by Lindsay Marie Trebet and Nick Martin. I thank you both so very much. And if you want to become a patron, you can do so at www.wheredidtheroadgo.com. And now our show.
Transmission start. Welcome to Where Did the Road Go? Join us as we wander off the path and explore lost history, consciousness, the paranormal, unexplained mysteries, alternative thought, and much more. We are present on the web at wheredidtheroadgo.com. Now here is your host, Soraya.
And welcome to this live edition of Where Did the Road Go? Of course, I've just lied to everyone listening to it on the podcast later. But this is being recorded live, broadcast on WVBR, and I have in the studio with me Roejen.
Again, hello, how are you?
Get that a little closer to you.
Oh, okay.
And you broke it.
I told you it was going to happen. I told you I was going to pull it off and it was going to break. And okay.
Yes,
Am I good?
You're
It's
sure.
not
I'll just turn it up a little.
Okay.
You're loud.
Oh, you said I was quiet last night.
I've never said you're quiet. And we have Gwen.
Introduce our friend.
Hello.
And Gwen, you've been on the show, well, twice now, but the other one hasn't aired yet. But you were on, what was it, like a year and a half ago?
It was about a year ago, yeah.
Okay. And we talked about your Kundalini and energy issues.
Yes.
And since then, you've, were you already doing like Bigfoot and ghost hunting things at that point?
Yeah.
Okay, because you never mentioned it during the interview.
No. Yeah, I was kind of doing it in secret, just
okay.
exploring my own theories and ideas.
Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about something Roejen wants to talk about after he gets done playing with the microphone.
I want to sit still.
Roejen is the host of Project Archivist, an excellent podcast that's been going on for 72 years now.
No, we're going on year 9 now.
Okay, same difference.
So we've been doing it for a while.
And
That's the thing.
you kind of do paranormal stuff, but you also do weird history and just interesting stuff that's out of the way.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't want to do, when we started the show, we didn't want to do entirely paranormal because a lot of people do paranormal. And we wanted to do stuff that we were interested in. We didn't want to cover Roswell. We didn't want to cover Amityville.
Right.
We didn't want to do Paranormal's Greatest Hits. So we said, let's do what we want, when we want, as long as it's strange and it's interesting and it gives people a different aspect and a different look at things.
Right.
So it's been the thrust of it since.
And we did another show I'm going to post later last night, which I think went rather well. You posted it. You streamed it live, and you're streaming live now.
Yes,
too.
I am streaming live on my Facebook page right now to
And
make a fool of myself again.
Since we are live, if you are listening on WVBR Saturday night, you can message us and interject your comments or questions, and we will deal with them. You can go to wheredidtheroadgo.com to do that. There's a little pop-up that you can put stuff in. Or I guess you can tweet at us on the Where Did the Road Go Twitter. That should pop up for me. Yeah, so find a way to contact us if you want to join the conversation. All right. Now, what was the thing I was just going to ask you, Ro? I don't know. Well, let's talk about last night.
The graveyard?
Yes. So I took you both out to the graveyard, and you both saw stuff.
Yes.
Did you not? Were we the only ones that saw
Oh, no,
things?
but I always see stuff there.
Yeah.
It's more that other people saw similar things. You both saw shadows, and you both saw lights.
You want to talk about the bone?
Oh, yeah, we did. We found a bone that looked really similar to human femur bone.
Yes.
And right next to the grave site that it was on was a giant hole underneath of a tree that led down really far to the ground. So I'm not sure if it was a large animal, but I did look up a human femur bone on the internet. It looked really similar.
Yeah,
So
we're walking, and I'm like, well, this is interesting. There's a bone on the ground. And your sister was out there with me. We come around looking at it. I'm like, well, that's a bone. We probably should just leave it alone. And then you run up with a stick and start flipping it around and moving it. And I'm like, well,
I had to see it from all angles. I had to get
that's
it on
probably
camera.
not a good idea, but it's been done. So
If you don't know what it is, you poke it with a stick.
Right.
Yes,
exactly.
Poked it with a stick. And then a debate was, that looks like a deer bone, that looks like this, it's too long to be. I'm like, well, it could be really anything. There's a big hole in the tree right there, so something could have dug in the ground and pulled the bone out.
Absolutely.
So that was unexpected.
So the thing about that graveyard is it's first of all, it's a liminal spot because it's between Cornell and Ithaca, the city of Ithaca. So it's literally on the side of a hill in this in-between spot. It's a very old graveyard. Goes back to the 1800s at least. I forget. I know I looked up the actual date that it started, and I was able to find that. And it's really just that one spot we were in that I've had activity. Like the rest
so you took us there deliberately to that spot.
Yeah, well, yeah, sure.
Okay.
We were looking for activity.
Okay.
But there's also a creek that runs right through that spot.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, running water is another one of these things that tends to draw out things.
Very true.
There were also lots of bugs. Lots and lots of bugs.
A lot of bugs. I ate one.
Huge amount of bugs.
I
I
ate
did too. Yeah, I did. I'm like, we probably shouldn't be on camera. I'm like,
now, what did you see, Roejen?
I saw off to the left. You were behind me, and she was off trying to do some EVP sessions or something. And I'm looking down the ridge, and of course, I'm an idiot walking around with my camera on my face all night. I'm like, oh, look at me. I'm Mr. Paranormal. So I had to turn that off because the lights were messing with me. And then I looked down the ridge, and at treetop, because we were up, so you can look across and you can see treetop from going down the hill. And there was a red shimmering, like a red and white shimmering. It resembled kind of like how a flag waves in the wind.
Mm-hmm.
And it did that, and it moved a couple of times. And then your sister was behind me, and I said, do you see that? And I can't remember if she said she did or not. But I kept looking at it, and I was getting frustrated. I'm like, all right, well, we're here. Come out. Don't play games. This is... Hi, say hi. This is what we're here for. And then there was also there were light flashes because you saw those.
Yes.
And they were also in the same general direction, but slightly to the left. And
Slightly lower, yeah.
Yeah. So you were seeing those and I was seeing that. And then when I looked away from the one and I looked over to the light flashes, the shimmering went away. And then I would catch the shimmering out of the corner of my eye and I look back. And when I look back, the light flashes would go away. So it was kind of like this game of going back and forth. And then you walked up with your flashlight and you were aiming it down the hill. I'm like, no, aim over there, now aim over there. And I'm not seeing anything. And this stinks. And I was kind of like going through my head because there was a lot of lightning bugs there. There was lightning bugs everywhere.
Yeah,
you turn the lights off.
which was really cool,
That
actually.
was cool. Yeah, it
It
looked like a
was really
starfield.
pretty, yeah.
So then I was going to myself, ever going into skeptic mode, I'm like, okay, well, maybe those are lightning bugs behind the trees, and it's so dark because it was pitch dark.
Yeah,
It was really
yeah.
dark. Maybe those are lightning bugs just radiating behind the trees, and I'm seeing the shimmer from the lightning bugs going off behind the trees. But lightning bugs don't shimmer like a flag. There would
Right.
have had to have been a lot of them to do that.
All together in unison.
Yeah, and I really
Yeah.
thought it was lightning bugs fooling with my eyes too. But then when I got a chance to see it directly on, not out of the corner of my eye, I knew immediately with the way they were flashing. I mean, fireflies don't flash red and blue. So.
Yeah, there was red and blue
Yeah,
colors.
yeah.
They were definitely red and blue. And even the shimmering was a red and blue.
Yeah.
No, red and white, I'm sorry.
And I'm kind of surprised we got as much activity as we did because you're kind of loud, not necessarily vocally, but like just presence-wise. Mm-hmm. You're very, hey, what's here? And you're talking on the phone and stuff, and I'm thinking, for the live
that
stream.
was dumb because she's trying to get EVP and she's trying to do stuff. But I was super tired. In my defense, it was late.
And we you still saw stuff.
I was not in
in
ghost hunting mode properly
Well,
at all.
in all honesty, sometimes different approaches work for different places.
True.
Sometimes it's better if you go in more quietly, and other places it's better if you go in loud and boisterous because they respond better to that.
So the spot that you guys saw stuff, usually that spot, if you just sit there quietly for a while, you'll start seeing globes of light float through the graveyard. And you'll see shadows move around you. It almost seems like things are swarming around you.
Did one of us see a shadow?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
thought
did.
something like that happened.
And I was off to my left, and it blocked out the whole view to my left side.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, so I couldn't see into the light, none of the trees off to my left side, and it was real fast. It was just like a flash. And it's so fast you could almost fool yourself, but at the same time, you know what you see.
Yeah.
And everything on my left side just went dark. So something was between me and the light source behind it.
See, my attitude is, you get all the ghost hunting. I've been doing this since I was a kid. I've been doing this for a long, long time. I was doing this when I was 15 years old. Not that I'm trying to be all hipster and braggy about it, but going into a graveyard, if the theory is you're talking to spirits, which in essence are people. So you don't want to be like the ghost hunting shows where you walk in there. If there's anybody here and get all spooky and weird and stuff like that, you're essentially trying to talk to a person in one way or another like that. So there's no sense in going in there and being all spooky weird about it. That's what irritates me about ghost hunting shows. They'll go in and they'll be like, okay, is somebody here? Then a chair moves and they get freaked out and they run out of the building. It's like, well,
That's funny.
okay, I'm
actually.
dead. I'm stuck inside. For some reason, I'm stuck here in the afterlife. And somebody walks in, give me a sign that you're here. Okay, I move a chair. They freak out and run out of the building. It's like, Thanks, rude.
That's all for entertainment purposes, really.
Yeah. But you're also assuming that we're talking to someone who was once alive,
True.
rather than interacting with some form of energy that could be just messing with our perceptions.
Okay, that even still, if you're going to go in there with the ghost hunting, woo-woo, spooky attitude, that just gives that kind of thing something to feed off of.
Sure.
So, like, I remember when I was at your house and we were in the backyard, and you said, this is where this happened. I'm like, all right, I'm here. Let's do something. And you were like, well, I think if something were to show up, you probably would have freaked out and ran away or whatever. And I'm like, well, maybe, but nonetheless.
It'd have been a story to tell.
Exactly.
So, I'm kind of the jerk to bring to these kinds of things. And it's not because I'm trying to be a jerk.
Well, that's what I mean by when I say you're loud.
Yeah.
You know?
You're trying to say I'm a jerk.
Yeah. But in a nice way, because you're not really a jerk.
I mean, if we were to go back out there tonight, I would probably have a whole different demeanor to me and everything, because I'm well-rested, sane. I'm not freaking out. Like yesterday, I was just really tired from driving in from Canada.
Yeah, you drove here all the way from where?
Canada. I drove through Canada. I came here from Detroit, driving through Canada to get to here. And as previously stated, Canada is always an adventure to go through.
So you were closing in on the 24-hour mark by the time you went back to the hotel.
Yeah. I got back, washed off the layer of dead bug spray, inadequate bug spray.
We just say that natural stuff doesn't always work.
You couldn't even talk at one point because, in your ears
it was
and everything.
It was bad. Everything.
It was bad. Like, I really wish we'd have stuck with our original plan of coming here in the late fall after everything was, like, the bugs were gone.
And we can always come back.
That's the plan. I'm going to try. But
So let's move on to the topic that you had that I thought was an excellent topic, which was, what do you do if your kids start getting into things like magic? Mm-hmm. And you brought this up because your daughter started kind of poking around.
At my house, because I've been into this for a long time, I guess we talked on the show last night. I don't know if it probably hasn't posted by now. But
no, it's not.
We talked a lot about magic and stuff, and I've been studying this stuff for years. I'm not really a practitioner. I'm beginning to dabble a little bit in it because I've just got such an accumulation of knowledge in it that's just kind of forcing its way through. But my daughter, I believe she was getting into magic. And it was like, are you getting into magic now? And she was like, So I was like, all right, come over here. Use this book, read that book, look at this one, stay away from that stuff. Don't do this. If you need to know anything, my library is open to anything. Just be aware of what you're doing. And it was kind of like telling your kids, all right, if you want to drink, you can drink at home. Just make sure I can keep an eye on you, don't being stupid. And then it takes away all the thrill and fun of drinking. Right. So, and I don't think she's really into it anymore or whatever. I'm eventually going to have a talk to her about it. But it got me to thinking, it was like, well, if you are a practitioner of magic, and there's lots of families that are into that stuff or pagan or what have you, how do you go about raising a child magically, responsibly? How do you raise a child, because when you're a teenager and you get into this stuff, if you're like everybody else, you just say, you know what, life sucks for me right now, or for whatever reason that drags you to it, you go to the bookstore, you go on the internet, and you find magics. You're not really sure what you get into. It might be Crowley, or like most people go to Crowley because Crowley, I'm sorry. That's stuck in my head because I just watched a movie where they mispronounced it, and now it's lodged in there. But so most people get into Crowley or whatever because of Ozzy Osbourne, or it's the dark thing to do. Yeah. So but if you're raising a child and you say, all right, well, where do you start? Because I think she was into Wicca, and my buddies was like, aren't you concerned about that? I'm like, no, what's she going to do? Dance around in the forest and take care of trees and stuff like that? I'm like, Wicca's pretty harmless. It's not a dangerous thing for people to be into, really.
Right.
So it didn't bother me at all, but it got me to thinking, how do you raise a child responsibly in a magical household, or if you're a family that's into that kind of stuff, where do you start? How do you start? Was it you that said it would be like bringing them up in a religion or something like that?
It's basically like... I think it was my sister that said that, but it's basically just like raising your child and teaching them any lesson. Yeah. If you're reckless about it, you're going to steer them in a negative direction. But if you're responsible and you let them find their own path in a responsible way, they're going to learn the better way to do things. I'm not saying there's a right or a wrong way, but at the same time, there's a way of being reckless when it comes to magic and occult type stuff versus being responsible.
I suppose it'd also be, because that's what I told her as well. It was like, just be aware that you're responsible for your actions. Much like in life, you're responsible for what you do.
Yeah.
Everything.
True. Everything has consequences.
Everything has consequences. It's like we said in the last night in the show. Everything mirrors. So there's a cost for everything. Mm-hmm. You got to be. It's like It's like giving your child their first BB gun. Go out and shoot pop cans and stuff like that. Don't shoot your eye out. And then the responsible parent's going to be there when the child goes out and shoots the BB gun or what have you.
Don't shoot your brother's eye out either.
Yes.
I've been there recently when my daughter invited something negative into our house.
I was going to get to that. Now if people go back and listen to the show with you, you have very rampant kundalini.
Yes.
You've had all kinds of weird stuff like mimics and stuff in your house.
Yeah.
And a lot just weird stuff following your whole life.
Yeah.
And now it seems to kind of have passed on to your daughter a little bit.
Yeah, and in full force. And I think a lot of it has to do with her age. She's coming into her age. She's 13 now.
Right. And that's the age when, again, liminal period. And
yeah. And she's been getting into magic and spells. And unfortunately, I didn't know about it right away, so I couldn't guide her in any way. I found out about it when I found one of her books.
Not to cut you off, but this reminds me of that old marijuana commercial where the dad comes in. Who taught you how to do this? Where'd you find this? And the kid's like, I learned it from watching you, Dad. Do you remember that?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Talk to your kids about magic before somebody else does.
You might want to, actually, because by the time I found out she was reading this book, she was basically praying to nothing. So what is she inviting in if she's praying to nothing? There's no name. There's no source that it goes to. It just says goddess. Well, goddess of what? So who are you calling out to when you're doing these spells? So she invited, in some way, something negative into the house. And I know it was because of the things she was doing, because it was aiming towards her.
Yeah.
Anytime she was alone, she would get messed with. She would get growled at a lot in the basement. So she tend to steer clear of that. And
whoops, some of the demon in the basement.
Yeah. And it was when she heard the growl that I realized that she was being basically
something
spiritually
was
attacked.
Yeah. Something was interacting with her.
And not in a positive way so much.
It's just water.
Yeah,
Everything's
that's
good.
fine. It's okay.
So not in a positive way so much. So then it was up to me to kind of pick up the pieces and to help guide her. Because I told her, you brought this in. You have to help me get it out now.
Yeah, because I remember I talked to you about it because you weren't really sure what to do, and I don't remember exactly what I told you to do.
Well, no,
you said it worked.
I think we both brainstormed together,
and
I think that's when we came up with a good plan as far as like having her kind of guide this thing out.
Yeah.
And so that's what we ended up doing. We used a lot of sage, a lot of strong will. And that seemed to make a huge difference. And we haven't had any kind of negative stuff, just the normal, weird stuff getting thrown around the house.
That's normal for you.
That's normal for us, That's the normal
That's
stuff.
not strange. Knives always inflate themselves into the wall.
Well, you had sent me a video of a mimic that when you were doing, what was it, a YouTube Live or Facebook Live?
Yeah, we were
video?
doing Facebook Live video.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you heard the voice right behind you and you just paused. Yeah.
I looked at my sister. I said, you heard that, right? She said, I heard that. And then we just kept going because it's just kind of normal for us.
So that clip is up with your interview. I don't remember if I used the audio or the audio and the video.
I think it was
remember.
the audio, yeah.
I have a listener. It's actually just told me on the Facebook stream here. Teach your child that magic is not a religion and to think outside the box.
That's good advice. It's a tool. Mm-hmm. I mean, manipulating anything you do, as we talked about last night, which hasn't posted yet. Anything you do is magic. I mean, and that's not meant to be a song lyric, but it's just very low magic. Any manipulation of reality is magic. So picking up this can is magic.
Opening a bottle of water and watching it spray everywhere.
Right. And then you build up on that. That's the lowest base magic. We're interacting with reality, and this is kind of how Crowley defined it. And as you build up, you're getting to the point where you're creating aspects of your own reality or drawing things into you. And a lot of people do this naturally.
I guess that would be where you would start at with your child. Then would be to say, all right, well, if you're going to do this, this is what you're doing, and this is how we're going to start. Pick your path, whatever your family's path happens to be, and then go from there.
And I think the reason books like The Secret was so popular is that there's a bit of that works. It's not quite how it works, but there's enough there that people can utilize it and see some results. But essentially, it's a different version of magic. You know, this positive thinking, this drawing stuff into
Is that
you.
the one that Oprah was behind or
Yes.
something like that?
Yeah, Oprah had a big part in making that a big book.
Yeah, somebody that I work with, I didn't know anything about it, and somebody I work with told me about it, and then I went and checked it out. I'm like, she is essentially talking about magic without using the magic
Right,
terminology.
exactly.
It's still force of will or what have you. I'm like, this is... I mean, I was like, this is Golden Dawn.
And there's lots of people who are never going to see results from stuff like that. Doesn't matter what they do, they're never going to see results. For some people like you, it just comes naturally, Roejen. You don't consider yourself a magician, but yet you can ask for something and it shows up.
Not always, but...
Not always, but enough times
It's like you said last
significantly
night,
enough.
I don't get what I want, but I get what I need.
Yeah, it's significant enough that it's odd. It's not just chance.
Yeah, it's odd. It's odd. It's in the realm of probability manipulation, or luck, if you will, for a better term.
Yeah.
But I also have the synchronicities that go along with it, which I think is a byproduct of it. If
Yes.
that makes any
Oh, yeah,
sense.
yeah.
It's like the radiation off of it. And that's you know what? That's the hardest thing to deal with all of it is the synchronicities, the crazy synchronicities that'll happen. Like me and a friend will be talking about something, and then something will pop up. Not directly in regards to it, but you can enough to where you go, okay, that's a synchronicity. Is where something somewhere is trying to tell you something in some way, shape, or form. Something, or something.
All right,
So,
something? Is that what you're trying to say?
something like that, yeah.
I understand something.
Do you have a lot of crazy synchronicities as with you that revolve around you and as well?
I do. A lot of mine more synchronized with the dreams that I have, though.
Oh, you're a dream walker.
Well, not so much
Somebody
a dream
accused
walker.
me of being that recently.
More like just I have a lot of dreams that will come to fruition over time, and that's me. We were talking about it
Yes.
today. That kind of shows that you're at least on the right path. And I think I had even mentioned that to you last night. How when you start seeing this kind of synchronicities, that means you're in the right direction with your life.
And it's like, you know, Eric Wargo goes with the whole static universe idea that this is, you know, everything that you don't make choices. You're just kind of going down this path that everything's preset.
You know,
And
did I ever talk
block
to you about...
universe is, I think, the theory.
Did I ever tell you about the weird out-of-time sequence experience that I had many years ago? Go
Maybe,
ahead.
but hang on. So you know, Eric will say, well, you're getting these precognitions because they're just things that are going to happen. And I'm like, but you can go against these things. And I actually gave him one in the Patreon segment that happened to me that I prevented. Because his argument is you can't prevent these things. They're just showing you what's going to happen. If you try to prevent them, they're going to happen anyway. And I'm like, so I had this one, and then I prevented it. And he went, huh. And I think he tried to work around it. But I think people do have a path, whether they realize it or not. Everyone's is different. You know, we're not here for the same reasons. Everyone has a different goal in being here. And I think when you're someone who's sensitive to this stuff and you start having precognitive dreams, you're the one we talked about earlier, you had, 5 years ago?
Yeah.
And so when you have that kind of a jump, and I've had those, I've had some 20 years old now, that came true. And it's like, okay, I guess I'm where I'm supposed to be. And you can look at it as, okay, it's a block universe and that's just where you're going to be. But I think that would be kind of pointless, you know, in a sense.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, you're acting a part, sure, and you're always acting a part. But I think there's freedom to that part. You can screw up your life if you want to.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
All right, go on with the out-of-time sequence.
I've told this before. It's been a little while, though. I was, we had pulled up in front of my house. We had a minivan. We went grocery shopping and handing the groceries to the kids at the back of the van. And then this really weird thing happened where it was like everything seemed like it slowed down. And, well, that was weird.
That happens.
Okay. And it was like I would know stuff that was going to happen a split second before it happened. And I was just kind of stuck watching it happen as it happened. It was like, okay, a bird's going to fly through here. Then a bird would fly through. A car's going to come around the corner. It's going to be a red car. Car comes around the corner, red car. And I was powerless to stop it or have any interaction with it. I was just sitting there watching it happen, as it felt like very much like I was out of sync with what was happening. I was slightly ahead watching it happen. It didn't last really long, but it felt like it lasted forever, and it was terrifying. It was not comfortable at all. And my daughter comes out to get to the, and I'm like, my daughter's coming out. I knew she was coming out, and I knew she was going to walk up, and I knew what she was going to say, but I'm still sitting there like, Don't say it. Don't. No. Oh, you know.
That's
like,
deja vu, right?
Well, it wasn't deja vu. It
Vujade?
wasn't deja vu. Yeah, it was deja vu in reverse. Because
that's what she said.
I guess. Yeah, I guess so. I guess that's how you put it. It did, and it just kind of fell back into place again. But it was really strange because it felt like I was on a carnival ride.
Yeah.
I was riding. I
I've
was
felt
on
like
rails.
that before.
Yeah.
You know, and
Many
just
times.
as soon as it was done, it was over with, and I was just sitting there like that. Of all the strange things that have happened to me, that's the one thing I don't ever want to happen to me again, because you feel powerless. It's like there's nothing I can do to prevent this. That door's going to open, and I can't stop the door from opening. That car's going to turn the corner. I know there's the car, you know, and it was really, really, really weird. So it put me on this idea that we're on a ride, like a fun house and amusement park or something like that.
Well, Jane Roberts Seth put out the idea that basically what's happening, time doesn't exist like we think it does. Time exists all at once, and there's multiple universes.
Time is an illusion, man.
Well, it's not an illusion. It exists, but it exists at one point. It's not linear like we think of it. So effects can go forward and backward in time. Mm-hmm. And that we live in a multiverse, that, you know, there's millions of infinite number of various universes, and we pick one of those to move through. Mm-hmm. And time, as he explained it, was the amount of information your brain can process at any given time. And I read that and I thought, so when you're bored and looking at the clock, time crawls.
I kind of feel like we should be smoking a joint.
and when you're busy and doing a lot of stuff or having fun, time flies. And I'm thinking, because you're processing a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. It's literally your brain process. It's your processor speed of your brain is time.
Yeah.
It just experiences it in a sequential order so that it makes sense to us. Mm-hmm. So that it has meaning.
But then how do you describe, if time has no order and it's no sequence to it, then how do you explain aging? How do you explain...
Well, aging can be... He had written, or she wrote something about aging is basically fear in your cells. Like, the more fear you have, the more you age.
So if I yell at my vegetables so they grow faster?
Maybe.
I should be 80 by now.
Exactly.
Now, I can't remember exactly how it was said, but I thought, that's a really interesting idea.
Then how come dogs age at a different rate than humans do?
Well, because we're all here for different things. You know, why do some people get cancer and others don't? You know? Come on, there are people who smoke until they're 110 and they're healthy. And then there are people who, you know, have never smoked a cigarette and develop lung cancer.
That'll be me. That'll be me.
So, I mean, it's one of those things where there's a reason there that happens like it does. I wanted to read this. A Block Universe thing reminded me of this. So this was an article in Skeptical Inquirer.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
I know people who write for that.
And this really summed up everything for me. The article is entitled "Why Parapsychological Claims Cannot Be True," and it is. Let me go to the actual.
Didn't do it this time.
Who wrote this? It doesn't say here. I'm gonna have to go to their website. Mark Kriegler is looks like who did this one. So anyway, he's talking about this guy who wrote an article, a few pages worth, explaining why psi is a thing. And it's kind of funny because we just did a show on the evidence of psi.
I think you posted this on Facebook, didn't you?
I may have.
Somebody had.
I don't know. Someone might have. Yeah. I don't think I did. But he, at some point, he says, Cardenas' paper was, to the untutored eye in the world of the paranormal, an impressive effort. It reviewed the data for psi, focusing mainly on meta-analysis of published papers that showed small or marginal effects, and, importantly, acknowledged the fact that there is no coherent theory for psi. Cardena, in an effort to find causal mechanism through which to understand the paranormal, brought in quantum mechanics, and to a lesser extent relativity theory, and the recently proposed notion of a block universe model in which past, present, and future all enjoy a simultaneous coexistence. The effort failed, mainly from some unfortunate misunderstandings of quantum mechanics, relativity theory, and the fact that the block universe notion is little more than creative speculation. While the paper bothered us on several levels, our primary concern was that it is symptomatic of a larger, more important issue that was being missed. It is not a matter of reviewing the existing database, scratching at the marginal and highly suspect findings of meta-analysis for something that passes the greater than 0.05 cutoff point. It is not a matter of rummaging around in arcane domains of theoretical physics for plausible models. It is more basic than that. Parapsychology's claims cannot be true. The entire field is bankrupt and has been from the beginning. Each and every claim made by researchers violates fundamental principles of science and hence can have no ontological status.
Don't mince words. How do you really feel?
We did not examine the data for psi. To the consternation of the parapsychologist who was one of the reviewers, our reason was simple: the data are irrelevant.
So we don't believe in what you believe, so we're not going to honor it.
How can you
review.
make those kind of statements if you haven't even looked at the data that they've collected?
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're not skeptics. They're true believers in a material universe that they claim to understand. And the data that doesn't fit just isn't true. It's just wrong.
That's
See, that
no
drives
different
me
than
crazy.
religion not looking at science.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that drives me crazy because if you're not going to continue your efforts in research and development and looking at other ideas,
Then why bother in the
then
first place?
science
Your mind's
is
already made up.
dead-ended. There's no purpose for it at that
Yeah.
point because everything is mechanical at that point. That they don't care about anything beyond the mechanics of stuff.
And-
Yeah, but the thing about science is it self-updates. If
Yes.
it's wrong, it fixes itself. and it
Usually.
moves
Sometimes it takes
Yeah.
sometimes it takes a few coffins.
It's at a certain point, it will right itself.
Yeah.
And it will correct whatever it needs to.
I mean, there is definitely. I mean, science is made up of scientists, and scientists are people, and people are fallible. So you're always going to get people who go, "Nope, my pet theory is not wrong." You know, the guy who proposed tectonic plate theory was blackballed.
Well, Galileo was too for the longest time.
Yeah, there.
You know,
was
going on. It
was
happens throughout history.
Yeah, but there's someone. Was it Galileo? Someone was saying there's more to that story than we actually know. That it wasn't. I don't know if it was Galileo. Who's the other guy who got?
Well, Pasteur was also
No, it wasn't
criticized.
Pasteur.
I mean, it's happened many
Starts
times.
with a C. Anyway, even
Crowley?
no, it was somewhere back in Galileo's time, and apparently it's not so much that the church was upset about his scientific ideas. It was other stuff that he was doing that ended him up in jail, and history has kind of twisted it to the church was trying to block his scientific ideas, and apparently the church was kind of like, yeah, that's whatever. It's this thing we don't like. But I can't remember the whole story. I should have saved it.
But going back to you can't go in and say you're subjectively looking at data if you don't want to look at data. That
Yeah, well, they're not. They're saying they already know.
Yeah, they admitted that they didn't even want to look at the data. They just
And
are making their assumptions based on what they've heard.
Yeah, and it's like I'm looking at this and I'm going, so you're literally admitting that the only reason you don't believe in psi is because psi can't be true. It's not, oh, we looked at the data and
Well, not to
found
be
problems.
mean, but that sounds like something that would come out of Skeptical Inquirer
yeah,
magazine.
exactly.
That's
And
the problem I have with the skeptical community. I mean,
because
skepticism.
they're not skeptics.
They're
Yeah.
hard, they're die-hard
cynics.
non-believers.
Yes.
cynics.
Yeah.
And there's a place for skepticism. There should be skepticism because if you don't have that kind of stuff, then the flat earthers win, and we never went to the moon wins, and all that kind of stuff. There is a place for it, but when it becomes to a point, it becomes its own religion at a certain point. This is what I believe, and that's all. And you people are just nonsensical and stupid.
Right. Right.
So,
it is
you know.
it's a belief system.
It's
And the worst part about the belief system is they're touting themselves as scientists. It's like you're not scientists because you're not looking at the data.
well, even now, like you can say, okay, this has been like the big thing is peer review. If you come out with a paper, you have to have it peer reviewed, et cetera, and so on. So now even peer review has its holes in it because and I already know somebody who's going to jump on my case for this, but. You can say, just take my data to someone who's going to support my claims. It's been peer reviewed. Now we've peer reviewed everything. Blah 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 blah. So so even that there's holes in it. That even within science itself, these things are starting to pop up and show up all over the place. I'm going to do a taboo here. Even climate change. For all the people out there, yes, climate change is a thing. You've got people know climate change is not a thing, and I am a scientist and I say it doesn't exist, and blah 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 blah. And it's like, all right, come on.
Well, and the problem with that is because it's so politicized, you get people who are like, look, the science is in, it's done. The science is never done. The
No,
minute
science
someone
is never
says
done.
the science is done, they don't know what they're talking about. Because we don't know everything, and we're never going to know everything, and we always have to keep looking.
We know
Absolutely.
nothing.
So, who was it that I was talking to? I was talking to somebody, and they made some kind of announcement that we have cracked this certain code or we've cracked this thing. And as soon as something gets announced that it has been cracked, somebody's already working on the next thing, because all people need to know is that the knowledge that, like if somebody comes along and says, okay, we've cracked how to do light speed. We know that light speed travel is now possible, blah, 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 blah. There will already, as soon as it's been confirmed that light speed is possible through science, there will already be people working on the next thing in the process to get it going before even fully understanding the data.
Oh, yeah, yeah, totally. And that's why science moves so damn fast now.
Yeah.
I mean, there are huge jumps, jumps that took
technology also helps a lot.
Yeah, hundreds of years space before in technology is now minutes. Because and everything just keeps changing rapid fire, and at some point it's going to outpace us because we don't understand how half the stuff we're doing works. We just know it works. We don't fully understand it.
This is true.
That's a problem with nuclear power.
That is a problem with nuclear power. Nuclear power was also dirty, and then it's
but when it happened, I remember there was plans on the books for Ford to make a nuclear car.
Yes, there were.
And this is where stuff like you have Fallout, like the game Fallout. There's nuclear cars in Fallout. If that would have been like the nuclear future or what have you.
So Stan, who's the UFO researcher? He died.
Friedman.
Stan Friedman actually was one of the people I think that created the atomic airplanes.
Yeah, we had him on my show talking about that.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah, you did the one really weird interview with Stan Freeman that he doesn't talk about UFOs.
Yeah, it was weird doing that. We had him on for episode 200, and we told him ahead of time, we're not going to talk about all the stuff you normally talk about. Again, myself and my co-host, we want to talk about what we want to talk about. We want to go into different directions. So we talked about just about everything and we were fascinated about the whole concept of nuclear airplanes, nuclear jet propulsion airplanes. I'm like, this is great, but planes crash. And what happens when a nuclear plane crashes? She goes, well, who cares about that? We're in the middle of working on this,
Oh, my.
Stan being the great guy that he was. But, it was a great interview, but I could tell that he was uncomfortable with it.
Totally uncomfortable with it, and it was great.
Because it took him way out of his cookie comfort zone.
He kept trying to turn it back into UFOs.
And we're like, no, we're not going there. Tell us about, like, when you did this and stuff. But I think, also, I think he was kind of glad to be able to talk about that kind of stuff, because it had been what he had been doing for years. But, like, off the air, me and Lobo were like, what are we going to ask him? And every question we came up with was non-UFO, non-SETI, we want to know about his history. But, yeah, he was one of the people, that was one of the secret projects he worked on, was nuclear jet propulsion, nuclear propulsion airplanes.
Yeah.
I think there was a train or something like that, if I remember properly, too. There was all these things that he was working on, and I'm like, this is great, but what happens when an accident happens?
When I had Douglas Dietrich on, and opinions of Douglas Dietrich's sanity can vary. One of the things he said is that some of those planes released radiation and actually polluted the landscape.
I don't know, because
I don't know
how
either.
It would work. I don't
know.
But
he was very adamant that this was in some of the records he destroyed. That this was part of the reason they discontinued it, because it was literally irradiating part of the landscape as they flew over.
Wow.
I guess I can see that happen. I don't know how.
I don't know if it's true. I don't know if it's true. Like I said, Douglas is a little out there. He's interesting to listen to, and some of his stuff checks out. Whether he's connecting the dots in the right way, I don't know.
I would think you would have.
We can't hear you.
Do you mind? I have a question.
Fidget has a question.
I have a question. Were they using uranium or plutonium as
I would
fuel?
assume so. I don't know exactly what these things were, how they were propelling the aircraft. I don't know how nuclear propulsion
fuel,
works.
But
it was nuclear, and if it was releasing radiation out of the plane,
how could that possibly ever be a good idea?
That's it.
They never finished. They never got to fusion. They got fission. They got it to work. They got energy, and they went with it.
Yeah.
Well, there's
exactly what you were
there.
saying, though. You know what I mean? Like they just were like, we got this working. We got power. Let's go with it. What do we do with all this waste now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that was the
we still don't know what to do with the waste.
Yeah.
And then you have Chernobyl and you have Fukushima and all these meltdowns, and they don't know what to do with those either.
They built a wall. They built a containment field around Chernobyl that is built to block for 100 years.
Yeah.
And they just got done rebuilding that wall.
Yeah, what is that?
And look at Fukushima. That's still a problem.
Russian. In 100 years we won't be here. It'll be somebody else's problem at that point. Give me the vodka.
All right, let's move on to ghost
Moose and squirrel.
or ghost and Bigfoot hunting.
Ah.
You told me something very interesting. You take your ghost hunting tools out on Bigfoot hunts.
I do, yeah. And I've had some really good results with it.
Yeah, you told me one that was pretty interesting.
Yeah. So we took my spirit box out to a Bigfoot location, and we decided to see what we could get. And when I turned it on, it was just the normal scanning through stations. And I said, why are we here? And our response was Bigfoot. So our question was, where is Bigfoot? The response was, go east. Well, we just so happen to be on the east side of the mountain. So, how much further to go east? Well, right off that way.
At a certain point, you start to go west.
Yeah, well, right off that mountainside, the east side of the mountain, is a drop off where there's a cave system. So that was pretty interesting.
Where was this at?
It's in the Pinnacles, in Kentucky. So just right east off that mountain, there's a cave system. So, is it telling us to go down in that cave system? Which obviously we couldn't do. It's very steep. You have to rappel down.
Right.
It wanted you to die.
Well, I'm telling you, if I had rappelling gear, you'd have to hold me back because I would have went.
I can totally see that.
Is that but I mean, what made you think to try that?
Honestly, a lot of the talk, I don't know if you've ever heard of quantum Bigfoot. Where Bigfoot kind of affects the energy levels on a separate field. So I wondered if that is the case, if there's some sort of spiritual energy that surrounds that type of creature, why can't we tap into that with the same tools we are trying to use to tap into spiritual energy?
Do you realize right now how many Bigfoot hunters, if they heard you say that, would lose their minds?
I understand that. You know what?
Yeah, the flesh and blood ones.
I have been warned ahead of time when I go to these conventions
To shut your
not
mouth.
talk
Yeah,
about it.
I can imagine.
I apologize, but I'm gonna put it out there because I feel like you got to expand your horizons. You got to
Yes,
look at things
yeah.
from another point of view to continue to grow. So if you're just stuck with that flesh and blood idea, you're not gonna find anything but flesh and blood
Yes.
proof.
Yeah.
So why can't we just look at the whole spectrum, see
Well,
what
for the same
everything
reason
has to
that the
offer?
skeptical inquirer is going to dismiss
Exactly.
the data because they don't like
without
it.
looking at it.
The flesh and blood Bigfoot people are not going to look at the stuff
Absolutely.
that suggests it's not a flesh and blood. It doesn't mean that there's not a flesh and blood Bigfoot out there. It means that either it might be something more than just that, or there might be two different things going on.
Yeah,
And
and it's
one
becoming
mimics
more
the other.
acceptable
Yeah.
in the Bigfoot community to look outside that box of just flesh and blood.
It's funny, when I went to the Mothman thing a few years ago, not to cut you off, but it ties into this. We went to the Mothman Festival, and afterwards my wife went to bed. I'm like, well, I'm going to go out. Everybody's hanging out at the pool. I'm going to go out there. We got Nick Redfern out there, Blackburn's out there, all the cool people, all the cool kids are out by the pool. So I go out there, and they're all trying to get me to drink, the moonshine apple cider stuff or whatever. But after everybody was sitting down talking, and we had UFO people and Bigfoot people and ghost people, everybody that was into the weird was all chilling out poolside outside this place. And it was funny sitting back because I don't put myself in any one particular camp, as most of us don't. That's why we all kind of communicate with one another. But you'd hear the Bigfoot people, and then you hear the UFO people, and the UFO people would think the Bigfoot people were weird.
Right.
And the ghost hunting people thought the Bigfoot people were weird. And everybody was kind of like, everybody was chilling out and partying and having a good time and stuff, but everybody was kind of in their own little camps.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then
yeah.
you had a couple of guys like me that was like, well, what if they're all tied in together here? And it was like a record scratching, the music stops, everybody stops and looks at you, and they're like, no, that's not how this works, And Redfern was actually pretty open to it.
Well, yeah, because Redfern is in that
Yeah.
camp where he's willing to
Yeah.
look at different things.
Blackburn was like, no,
Yeah.
I don't think it works that way.
Well, I got to talk to Blackburn at length when he was at the Para Horror Convention up in Buffalo a few years ago, and he flat out, I said to him, "Okay, you believe it's a flesh and blood creature?" And he said, "Yeah." I'm like, "Have you ever seen anything paranormal associated?" And he goes, "No." He's like, "I've never talked to anyone, but I'm also thinking, but are you asking?"
Correct.
He's like, "No one has ever told me about UFOs or anything else involved with these sightings," and I'm like, "Do you ask?" And he goes, "No."
Well, that also goes back to the story you were just talking about, though. If the evidence doesn't fit your paradigm, you're not going to pay attention to it or listen to
Well,
it.
and that I think is not so much that he's ignoring the evidence; he's not even looking. Because he's based it on an assumption. And I like Lyle. I'm going to have Lyle on again very soon. Talk about his new book, Momo. I think he does good work. But as far as theories go, I think he's not seeing what else might be there because he's not looking for it. And I said to him, "Well, if these things are real, why haven't we found one of them dead?" And he very honestly said, "I don't have a good answer for that question."
Well, at least he's honest about that.
And he's a great down-to-earth guy. I really like him. I just don't fully agree with him that it's only a flesh and blood creature. I mean, it's entirely possible that somewhere in the Pacific Northwest there's a species of large ape that we know nothing about. It's a lot of area.
Yeah.
Now, when it's, a sighting on the edge of a populated area where there's not enough room or food for a breeding population, you're going, what did they really see? Oh, look, there was a UFO sighting 20 minutes later. It's
See,
like,
that's
what's
the stuff
really
that-
happening right here?
When we
Yeah.
first started doing this, that was the stuff that really enthralled me, was where these things intersect. When you have people that have Bigfoot sightings and then they have UFO sightings. That's like the Mothman prophecies. There was a lot of different stuff
Yeah.
going on. Everybody
Yeah.
that gravitates to the Mothman, there was UFO sightings, all kinds of
Men
stuff.
in Black, UFO sightings,
Yeah.
poltergeist stuff, doppelgangers.
Ignis Fatuus.
Yeah. Ignis
What?
Ignis
don't-
Fatuus.
I don't
There's
remember.
not supposed to be any swearing on this show. What are you talking about?
Will-O-Wisp.
Oh, Will-O-Wisp. Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
You're right. That is what they're called. Yeah.
I are dumb.
There were. I mean, there's a part, and they actually cut it out of the Mothman Prophecies movie. I liked the movie. I think they did the movie really well because they kept the sort of creepy aspect of it. But there's a part they cut out, which is the part where John Keel is on the mountainside and they're watching these globs of UFOs that look like gelatin masses.
Wow.
And if they aimed their flashlight at it, the thing would move out of the way of the beam.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, what's that? Are you telling me that's a nuts and bolts craft?
There was a story that we read on the show, I don't know how long ago it was, but there was reports of these giant flying manta rays.
Yes, I remember this.
And it
I
was
don't
also
remember hearing
tied
it
in
on
with
yours.
Bigfoots.
Yeah, but I
Wow.
remember that hearing about that.
There were people who were reporting Bigfoots, and then they had these giant flying manta rays that were going through the air.
Mm-hmm.
And the manta ray story is like when you have misplaced creatures like that don't next you're going to be hearing about sky dogs, dogs
Yeah.
running through the sky or something like this really weird stuff.
Were they solid like manta rays, or were they
There
like?
there's been reports of solid ones. There's been reports of manta rays are the big ones, flying manta rays, like big, huge. But there's also
Yeah.
I've read more reports of sky sharks and stuff. But oftentimes you have also reports of
floating trucks?
no, like well, we did have a guy on my show that told a story about a flying space potato that was over his city once, which was great. Even he acknowledged that it was ridiculous, but he's like, yeah, I saw a flying space potato.
And that's the thing. That's intellectual honesty.
Yeah.
Like, I know this sounds ridiculous. This is what I saw. That's that,
Yeah, I actually commend on. I'm like, it takes a lot of guts to come on the show and not only tell a story, but nobody wants to talk about a space potato. Because seeing a strange object flying through the sky, people are already going to think you're a little nutty as it is. When then you tell people it's a giant space potato, he's like, yeah, that's what it was. It looked like a giant flying space potato. So even I was laughing at him, but he knew, he knew it was all in jest and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's where these stories interconnected, interwoven over one another, where you have reports of poltergeist activity and UFO sightings.
And poltergeist activity follows all this stuff. And poltergeist activity seems to be electrical in nature. And that's also something that follows all this stuff. And she and I have been talking repeatedly about, is it us?
Yes.
Is it?
Is it tulpification? Are we
Yeah,
creating the
are we
phenomena?
creating all this weird phenomena? Because, I mean, in a way, it would disappoint a lot of people, but I think, oh my God, what if we are? If we're that powerful that we're literally creating UFOs and Bigfoot and everything else unconsciously, what are we really capable of?
Yeah. And we were discussing tonight, on top of that, on a smaller scale, the longer you use a spirit box,
Or an EVP.
or the longer you use an EVP device, the more hits you'll get on those things.
Yeah.
So are we actually imprinting on our devices or causing them to do that because we've been with this device for so long? Or are we getting actual responses?
Right. Do you want to tell people
What if
about...
they're following you?
Yeah, they could be following
Yeah.
you. You want to tell people about the doppelganger stuff with you in the one house?
Oh, yeah. I have had a lot of experiences where people have seen me. We're in places where I haven't been. When I was younger, my mom seen me walking in the kitchen, and I was outside. My kids have seen me standing in their bedrooms when I'm actually in the kitchen. And then more recently, a friend of mine, I don't know if I should say his name, but he is a paranormal investigator, and he went into a location after me. And he was, I had been there a few nights ahead of time, left. Their group came in, was exploring the place. And as he was coming out of one room, he seen me walk into another room. So again, that goes into what did I imprint on that environment in like a stone tape theory?
Now, were
type
you
of way?
asleep at the time too?
I was asleep.
So,
I was,
or were you there in
I was
an out of
actually
body state?
very emotional about not having been there because I got a real attachment to that place after I left. And so when I was not there, I went to bed thinking about it. And then that's when that experience happened.
And didn't they also get an EVP of your voice?
Yeah, they had a EVP of my voice, not just at this location, but another location that we had frequented at the same time.
You got an EVP of your own voice.
He got an EVP of my voice.
Now,
after I was gone, after I'd already been there before.
Now, also add that to the fact that she gets mimic phenomena.
I do.
Where voices will repeat her while she's talking.
Yeah.
So how does that all like interconnect?
And that was the video that you had shared at the end of the one.
Yeah. I think you just
before.
Really?
That's a new one. I've never heard of.
Yeah, you'll have to look at the video.
EVP of voices of people that they know when they weren't actually there.
Yeah. So
I mean, it happens more often than you think. A lot of people don't really talk about it because it
doesn't fit.
There's even taboo in the paranormal world too.
Yeah, of course. There's
and people don't want to think that they're imprinting on their environment when they're there, and that's the responses they're getting.
Well, there was the one story of the woman who kept seeing a ghost walk down the stairs, and it turned out to be someone who used to live there who was still alive.
Yeah.
You know, and because they saw them and they went, "Oh my God, that's the ghost!" And they were like, "What?" You know, and it was like, "Oh, I used to live in that house."
There was a story that somebody that I knew was telling me about, that he was going to this house, and the family at the house the kids were talking about this old woman that would come up and talk to them and give them treats, and the kids drew a picture of the old woman, and eventually they moved out. And then that woman moved into the house when he went back and visited the house to follow up on what was happening. It was John Tenney, actually, that told me about this. He was investigating it. And it was the woman living in the house, and he talked to her, and she was like, "Oh, yeah, there's these ghost children that come up and talk to me all the time, blah, blah." And it was the kids that were previously living at the house.
So things are out of sync.
Twisty-turny-timey-wimey,
And the environment, I think, has a lot to do with this stuff. It's emotional energy put into the environment, but I think there's also certain spots that have a certain energy that mess with this stuff, that mess with what we are and how we interact with stuff.
Yeah, I can understand that. I can see that happening. Stephanie wrote on my Facebook thing that something about Ted Owens and the PK Man by Mishlove. Do you understand that reference?
Not off the top of my head, but the names are familiar.
Yeah, she put something on here in regards to that. I'm not sure what she's talking about, but I'll bring it up to you because maybe you would know. So.
Ted Owens and the PK Man. Huh?
Yeah, Ted Owens and the PK
Let's see if anything can trigger me here.
By Mishlove.
There he is. Ted Owens.
Yeah.
Was an alleged UFO contactee who claimed paranormal powers, died in 1987. That's literally all I came up with. This one tells me more. No, it doesn't.
Everybody's scrambling on their phones except for me.
Owens, who had a genius-level IQ and was a member of Mensa, believed he had been subject to psychic surgery by space intelligences who had operated on his brain to allow him to receive their telepathic messages. He considered himself a UFO prophet and compared himself with Moses, claiming psychokinetic powers that enabled him to not only predict but control lightning, hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, and volcanoes. Dubbing himself the PK Man, Owens professed that his alleged powers were given to him by space intelligences who wished to call attention to the dangers of nuclear weapons, of course. This is the typical contactee message. And environmental pollution posed for mankind. Yeah, so I don't know quite what she's referring to when she mentioned that. But he sounds like a basic a contactee. Science fiction and comic book writer Otto Binder wrote that Owens suffered a series of accidents resulting in brain trauma, which he felt were responsible for Owens' supposed supernatural powers. Parapsychologist Jeffrey Mishlove wrote a book about Owens, the PK Man, the true story of mind over matter, with a foreword by Johnny Mack.
That sounds fascinating, actually.
Yeah, it does. I don't know the case.
Yeah.
But we were also talking, you said you were a little disappointed if the ghost phenomena is us, because what happens when we die?
Yeah.
And the thing that always strikes me, and I told you this, near-death experiences, because you were saying that some scientists will say the brain can live for a few minutes or
after death, and that they believe that's where the
near-death experience is happening. But there's a couple of things about near-death experiences that really impress me. And one of them is if your brain is deprived of blood and oxygen, and you're brought back to life, most of the time you suffer some level of brain damage. People who have near-death experiences usually do not. If anything, they have increased abilities, increased IQ, like a more well-balanced personality. I mean, Dr. Ring is probably the best one who went through and showed all these after effects of both people who thought they were abducted by aliens and people who had near-death experiences, and showed that the after effects are very significant and very similar, which also pushes against the idea that this is aliens doing this.
Aliens.
And
I'm sorry, I had to do it.
And it's interesting also because, as Strieber and his wife have said, whatever this UFO thing is has something to do with death. And here we see similarities to the near-death experience. But the other thing about that, people saying, well, it's just the brain dying or something like that. The out-of-body state that happens at a near-death experience verifiably has been shown to be accurate. Someone will say, okay, I went into this room and I saw that, like the famous one was the girl flew out into the other room, saw her relatives there, didn't know they were there, could tell what they were talking about, flew down the hallway and out the window, and she looked back at the building and saw a red shoe on the ledge. And when she was revived and she told the doctor's going, that wasn't real. She goes, well, go look on the ledge. And the doctor went out and looked on the ledge and didn't see anything. And then for the hell of it, leaned out a little further, and around the corner was a red shoe.
Wow.
And the doctor
goes
went
back to this thing we were talking about earlier, where we don't support that, so we're not going to throw that into our data.
But the doctor did. The doctor said, okay, whatever you experienced, you knew that shoe was there. That's really it. Because apparently you couldn't have seen it from the ground. The only way you could have seen that shoe is if you were outside the building looking at the angle they said they were, because she had to lean out the window to see it. So, and the woman had never been in that hospital before. So it's not like she planted a shoe.
Exactly. And I think I remember that story, but I'm not sure if I heard it from you or somewhere else. But didn't they, based on that, didn't some doctor set something up where he put something high in the room?
Yeah, there was some kind of notes or something like that on top of something that the person...
And I don't think it's ever been successful, but
right.
The other thing is, when you're in that state, you're not analytical.
Yeah.
You're like, what's happening? What's going on? You're not going, can I read this sign?
See, the thing is, though, is not all near-death experiences are the same.
No, they're not.
It's not the light at the end of the tunnel. Those are the ones that everybody hears about. I saw my relatives, light at the end of the tunnel. It was all happiness, blah, blah. And you've talked to Lobo, my co-host, about what happened to him. He had a very unusual and different experience. And
Cheryl Lee has had both good and bad experiences. She's had 3 near-death experiences. And the second one, she freaked out and in that state ran and ended up in darkness, and it scared the hell out of her. Because she said there were things around her in the darkness. And even recounting it now, because that was when she was in her 20s, even recounting it now, it gets her very, very emotional. And then her energetic stuff starts up and she crashes computers. So, I mean, but yeah, and she said that when she goes to near-death conventions, they don't want to talk about the negative stuff.
Yeah.
They only want to talk about the positive stuff. And she's like, but that's not all there is. There's elements to this from both sides.
Absolutely.
And again, these people don't want to see the data.
We had my friend Tom on. We ran his episode about 6 months ago, and he overdosed and died while playing World of Warcraft.
Oh, Tom Badhammer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you remember that show?
We should have gotten a hold of him. Why didn't we get a hold of him?
He's difficult to get a hold of. So
I always forget when you're
back
here.
On the show.
Yeah, but he could be right here with us.
Yeah, well, he doesn't live too far away from us, I understand. But he was done. He was actually, I believe he was dead to the point where rigor mortis was beginning to set in when they found him. And he's still a little bit messed up from it. But in his experience, he more or less saw his life and all of the different possibilities it could have branched off into. And it was like, he said, it was like a fractal spiral, like the Fibonacci code going out with all the different things in his life that he could have had. And many times, every time I run that show, like that one, or anytime we run some kind of a near-death experience show, somebody will write in and say, "Hey, that show changed my life," or whatever. That made me want to live or do whatever. I've had more than a few people do that and say that to me. But his experience was not stereotypical at all either. Like, he knew he was dead, and it was trying to tell him, "You screwed up. This is everything you are and could have been, and what you could do." And what you could be. And then he got back and he changed his life. Now the only thing he frets about, he's like, I gotta get my body back into shape. I gotta go out and do lifting and stuff like that.
Yeah, I ran into him like a year ago or so.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have yet to meet him in person. I would love to. He's a really good guy. I hear from every once in a while. I check up on him and see how he's doing. And anytime somebody sends something, this show changed my life, I always forward it on to him, because I feel if he had that experience and it made that much of an impact in his life, that hearing something like that is meant to keep going.
Yes. Yeah.
So, but his experience wasn't typical. Lobo's wasn't typical. I've talked to many people that don't have the typical.
There aren't typical ones.
No, they're not.
And the thing that, like I said, the thing that impresses me is the data that you get when they're out of body. The fact that it can be verified. The fact that after the fact you get healing, you get higher IQs. There was a woman in France, and I don't remember her name. She was Indian, and she had end-stage cancer. She was dying. There was no two ways about it. And she died. And after she died, they said, you know what? This isn't your time. We're sending you back. She came back completely healed.
Wow.
Cancer was completely gone, and the doctors kept going,
whoops, we screwed up. We're sorry.
And the doctors kept going, this isn't possible. Let's run more tests. Mm-hmm. And she walked out of the hospital. And I think, as far as I know, she's still cancer-free.
We're going to give you a coupon for a better life.
That's amazing.
And so, like, how do you explain that?
Yeah.
I mean, skeptics won't look at that. Mm-mm. Or they'll say, well, it's been faked. But she has all the x-rays. She has all the doctors' stuff.
Doesn't matter.
Everything.
Again, skepticism has become cynicism. Like, true skepticism is gone. Like even you see it with conspiracy theorists and stuff, too. When I was growing up, there was conspiracy theorists, but it wasn't like they are now. Everything is conspiracy now, whereas when I was younger and growing up, there was conspiracy theorists, but there was some intelligence in how the things were fact-checked and stuff like that. So everything's changed. Everything has its own little means to an end, or whatever you want to call it now. It happens in all of the fields in one way or another.
Yeah, that's very true. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. We're going to take a quick break here from the show. You're listening to Where Did the Road Go? And I'd like to thank my patrons, because without them, this show may not be possible. And I particularly want to give a shout-out to those patrons pledging $10 or more: Allison Cook, Lindsay Marie Trebet, Nick Martin, Super Inframan, UFO Weekly News, Tim, Edu, Camahort, 36 Dingo, Maria, Nate Syria, Jennifer Campbell, Mike McGuire, Paul Buscini, Kevin, John Rutledge Foster, Eric Citron, Janet Runyon, Andy McNamara, Sasha Lorg, Matthias Sundby, Christopher Vaughn, Riker and Stark, Sean Cosgrove, Jose A., Roger Gonzalez, Lindsay Jackson K., Alfred Tuttle, Kevin Schreck, Patricia Giaquinta, William Lovelace, Mark Brady, Chris Isa Hot Dog and Sandwich, John Eddy, and Carla Mahoney. Thank you all so very much. And we're here with Roejen and Gwen talking about all kinds of stuff.
Fun stuff.
Do you want to talk about what she was just talking about?
Yeah. So my cousin was having a lung biopsy done, and something happened, and she actually died on the operating table. She saw our grandpa, and he was holding her hand, and he told her that it wasn't her time. She needed to go back. There's still things she needed to do. So when she came back and was in the recovery room, she kept telling her mom and everybody that was there that she saw our grandpa that had passed away. And, nobody could understand why. They just said, it was just you sleeping. But then they started getting really curious, and they finally spoke with the doctors, and the doctors admitted that she did crash on the operating table. They didn't even tell her until after she had started questioning it.
There was a heart doctor who did not believe in near-death experiences, and he figured this is the perfect place to do this. So he gave everyone a survey that he did operations on, like, for a year. And they had the same questions no matter whether they had a near-death experience or not. So he had a control group and everything. And when he got done, and the questions would be things like, what do you think was happening during your surgery? What did you experience, et cetera, et cetera. And when he got done, he found that the people who did not have near-death experiences could recall, when they asked, what do you think was happening, they were completely wrong. Like, their idea of what was going on in their surgery was not even remotely close to what was actually happening. It was based on television, usually. The people who have near-death experiences and were out of body were dead on every single time.
Wow.
The other thing he found, though, is that some people had near-death experiences who hadn't died. They were not dead, and they had this experience. And other people died and didn't have the experience.
Wow.
And he's like, I don't understand why not everyone has it. And this is why I say I don't know if this is what happens when we die. I think the near-death experience is something that puts people back on the right track. You know, like if you're off, or it's something that needs to be brought back here in some way. It's an enlightenment experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's using it's something that maybe you're getting when you have an alien encounter. It's not aliens, it's the same sort of experience. I mean, any of this stuff, a shamanistic journey, any of this stuff all kind of connects, and it's to bring something back here that isn't here.
Yeah.
You know, it's to inspire people, to move people forward. Because I think, yeah, you know, like I like Buddhism. I like some of the ideas, but I do not agree that this world is just an illusion to be escaped. I think there's more to it than that.
Yeah.
I think this is something we're building, and it's not going real well at the moment, I don't think.
I could agree with that statement.
I mean, and it's funny because when you look at it, you know, you look back, you know, 500 years ago, and it was a pretty bad place. You know, we think it's bad now, but we look back then, it was worse.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah.
So I think we are progressing. It's just there are always things dividing us, and until we understand to stop letting things divide us, and it's usually other people or belief systems and things like that, until we're comfortable with ourselves and are able to stop this division between us, you know, we're hindering progress.
Yeah, but that's always going to be there. It's human
Maybe,
nature to do that.
but yeah, but is that
Like
what
we're at a time right now?
Are we evolving?
In my life that I've never seen more division ever.
Right,
So-
but are we evolving away from that? Is that part of what we're trying to do?
I think
You know,
there's
to
gonna be a
overcome
kickback.
that.
I think there's going to be the pendulum's going to swing in another direction at some point.
Sure,
If
sure.
it's the next generation that sees what's going on now and says, "No, we're not going to do that. You people are idiots." Because I have this debate with my daughter all the time because she's a millennial, you know, and I'm from the '90s when our generation, like, you know, I remember going to Lollapalooza. I was like, "Yeah, we're going to vote. We're going to change things." And now here we are years later. We've done nothing. or made things worse. So I'm one of these people that's like, you know, millennials catch far too much grief for what they do just because they're trying to do things differently. And I'm like, yeah, go destroy the system, change it, do something, do things differently. Don't be ashamed to do that because you're watching what's happening now. So, you know, and I have a feeling, I'm hoping that in 20 years, like they do what my generation couldn't do.
Yeah.
You know, we were the angst generation. And you know they're not doing things the way we do, but every generation does that. You had that with the hippies. You had
Sure,
the generation
sure.
before belittling the little the generation afterwards.
Yep.
Like I always feel like I'm in the wrong generation because I see what's going on now with younger people. And I'm like, all right, not everything you're doing is great, but I can get behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel bad also because everything that the younger generation does now, everything is analyzed,
yeah,
everything is metric, and everything is blamed on. Millennials are killing this, millennials are doing that. And it's like, man, just let them go. And all they're doing is they're just getting angry, more and more angry, and like, no, and it makes them
Yeah,
want to rebel
yeah.
even more. And I'm the old man on the sidelines. You go, kid. You know, with the walker.
You can walk on my
Give the
lawn.
finger to the man. Yeah, walk on my lawn. You know, I'm that guy. You know, but yeah, because especially with politics and everything going on right now, there's so much division, and so
Yeah.
much divisiveness, and then on top of that, you have things like social media and news and these things that are enhancing that and promoting that to keep the interest going.
The powers that be are pushing their agendas, and they know what they're doing.
I feel like we're heading in a better direction than we ever have been.
Yes. Yeah, I think we are.
Yeah.
It's going to be rough, though.
We got a little bit to go. I mean, I think there's some kind of a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
You know, I drive a hybrid and I catch grief for it all the time.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Because it's a hybrid. It's funny. I've got a motorcycle and I like my other ride's a motorcycle. You know, I've got this gas guzzling, blah, 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 you know. Then I drive a hybrid.
Well, you make up
So-
for the gas guzzler then.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love my
you equal
hybrid.
it out.
Yeah,
It's yin and yang.
Don't know why you wouldn't.
I would love to have a Tesla too. That's the dream car
Yeah.
of mine. But
But that stuff is cool now.
well, it is. But by the same token, like Ford right now is not producing any hybrids. I think Toyota still is, but most of the auto industry really isn't, that I know of, isn't really producing any hybrids right now. I
Really?
know Ford is not yet. Ford is going to start producing them again, but you have the Tesla, which even Tesla came out and Tesla was cool. He's like, listen, all of my patents, we can't produce cars fast enough. I've got no problem selling cars. All of my patents belong to everybody now. If you can have my patents as long
Right,
as you are
right.
in good faith going to make a vehicle, blah, 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 blah. And then I think GM may have taken him up on that. I think GM's got some kind of a electric pickup truck or something coming out. So there's a few things in the background that are happening, but in my opinion, not enough. If we know the tech is there and you can take the tech and you can use it and you can do stuff with it, stop screwing around, The guy, I'm rich, I can't make enough cars, I'm building spaceships, I'm doing tunnel. Look, I made a flamethrower. Just take my technology and do it. Look, I'm smoking weed on a radio show. I don't care. All right, whatever. He's saying we can do it. Let's do it. It's not happening fast enough. It's just not happening, and a lot of it, I think, is politics and things like that.
Well, yes,
money
it
involved
definitely
and stuff
is.
like that. So it's like this needs to happen faster. This needs to happen now. We need to start letting go and start doing things differently. And
we got to stop letting the powers that be divide us.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Good luck with that, though. It's the way that it is because people want it to be that way.
Yes, and the thing is, though, you see a microcosm of that in the paranormal community, whether it be UFOs or whatever. Even within same groups, like I think it was Mike Cleland who said he would go to UFO conventions, and you'd see the women on one side and the men on the other, and the men were all nuts and bolts UFOs, and the women are all like, "Oh, I had this psychic experience with this UFO," and it's like, and he's like, and they're not talking to each other.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever seen that Saturday Night Live skit where they're all being interviewed about the alien encounter? And it was I was taken up into a light. Then they got the girl on the end saying, I think we had the wrong experience. These aliens were coming in and playing with my chest. And you've seen it, right? You ever seen that skit?
I don't think so.
Oh, yeah. It's hysterical. And that's exactly how it is, too. They're like, it was beautiful. I felt like I was one with the universe. And the girl's like, listen, I don't know what you're talking about, but, it was hysterical.
Well, I think a lot of that comes down to how we respond to this stuff. If you respond to it negatively, it's going to be a negative experience. If you don't respond to it negatively, I was telling her Jamie Kimball came on the show, and he had some really interesting stories. And he had something, and I don't remember exactly. People can go back and listen to the show, but he had asked in a Patreon segment what to do because this thing kept attacking him in like a sleep paralysis state. And Ren and I were the ones who fended this question, and we just said, just tell it to leave you alone. Or like, just tell it to, F off. And Ren's like, something once attacked me and I ate it.
What?
You don't know that story? That kills me. He was in this out of body state.
Dude, I want to eat a UFO so bad.
No, it's not a UFO. It was some kind of thing that came to him in the out of body state, like a creature, and he grabbed it and swallowed it.
As you do.
It's amazing.
Yeah. As you do.
And so, we said to Jamie.
That's probably what happened to us at the cemetery last night. We were swallowing ghosts. We thought we were swallowing bugs.
They tasted nasty then.
Yeah.
And, so Jamie's, we tell Jamie, well, just tell it to leave you alone, And so he did that, and the thing attacked him more. And we went, okay, look. First of all, Ren and I might be reckless. Second of all.
We might be.
Second of all, you probably didn't mean it. And that's the key. Like, it's not what you say, it's what your intent is.
Yes.
So if you're going in there with doubt, that thing's going to take advantage of that doubt. Even if that thing is you, if it's some level of your unconscious mind that you need to deal with, it's going to take advantage of that doubt.
Yeah.
So you have to be sure in what you're saying, definitive, and you have to deal with it. In Ren's case, if it was some part of him that he then ate, he then now has dealt with whatever that is, and that probably came out in his life over the following weeks.
That goes back to us projecting all these experiences
Right
on ourselves.
In my experience, when you poke this stuff, at least with me, it pokes back.
Oh yeah.
So I'm very curious as to what's going to be happening with me in the next coming weeks or whatever, because I've gone on here, we've talked about the stuff that we talked about last night. A lot of this stuff makes me uncomfortable to talk about. I was telling her, I'm like, I really don't like going on other podcasts. I'll go on yours, but most shows I don't like going on anymore. But plus we went to the cemetery and we were poking around with stuff there. So I'm putting myself out there for a lot of this stuff to poke back. And I'm not normally comfortable with that. I really don't like it because I don't like the poke back, but I'm actually really curious to see what's going to happen now.
And while you napped today, I took her to the other cemetery, the one down by Willard, which is the Potter's Field. And that one you didn't get a bad energy from at all.
No, it was just a really low-lying energy. There was an energy there, but it was very calm, very settled.
Yeah.
And it was very peaceful.
I
liked it.
I wasn't there.
Yeah. I very much like that place, but that's where some of the weirdest stuff that's ever happened to me has happened. And it's always happened in the daylight. It's never been stuff at night. When we went up there at night, nothing weird happened.
That's interesting.
So
it's like whatever it is, it wants you to see it. It wants you to experience it.
And it's been, that was the whole tree shaking thing and the moving gravestone and stuff like that, where it's just like, okay, that's pretty blatant. You
Yeah.
know?
You that sent me the message today that said you guys brought your stuff in your hotel room and then you came back and everything was moved.
It was, yeah. So we went up to our hotel room, and we had.
I was half asleep. I'm like,
Well, I just thought it was weird because we had just come back to our hotel room. We brought all our stuff up, and when we walked back outside to go get some more stuff out of our vehicle, when we come back up, her suitcase, my sister's suitcase, was knocked over. There was papers on the desk that were on the floor. It was just like everything was moved around in a really odd way. And it was weird. No, her suitcase wasn't knocked over. Her suitcase had stood back up. That's what it was. She had it laying down flat so she could unzip it and get stuff out. Zipped it back up, left it laying flat. When we came back up, it was
on
upright.
the bed standing upright?
No, it was on the floor standing upright.
Did it fall off of the bed onto the floor?
I'm not sure. It was sitting on the floor.
on the floor. Yeah.
Okay. Huh.
I don't know where she said her
Could someone
suitcase
have
at.
gotten into the room in that time?
See, I don't think so because nothing had been gone through. It's not like it was like
It was just adjusted.
it was just weird. Everything was just adjusted in a really weird way. It looked like the desk had been swiped to the floor.
Well, maybe something followed you home last night.
Well, maybe. I mean, that happens a lot. To be honest with you, it really does.
Well, I'm the one off the sideline last night. I'm sitting there. I'm like, hey, why don't you call him in? You know how to call him in? Go do it. So again, I was the wrong person to have there. And you're doing this thing.
Sigils.
Me being oblivious. I'm telling you, okay, call these things in. So you're doing your stuff, and I'm like, blah, 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 blah.
I did.
I'm waiting for you to walk up and smack me in the back of the head and tell me to shut up. You know?
I don't think it would have helped.
Thanks.
Just had you eat a couple more bugs. That's all.
It's my nature. If I'm there to do this, I'm gonna poke it.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, that works in some
But-
places.
And
It does.
and I'm thinking in the back of my head, I see you over there doing your thing. You're doing a sigil, and in the back of my head, I'm like, you really should just shut up and let this happen. But I'm like, nope,
You
I'm
couldn't
tired.
stop yourself.
I was trying not to, but I was so tired and so loopy. It was 3:00 in the morning, and I'm like, hey, this bug spray really sucks. Blah blah blah.
And as much as I say this stuff might be us, it might also not be us. And there are definitely experiences out there that are so strange. I mean, Jeff Ritzman has tons of them.
Oh yeah.
Where you're going, that seems like an other. I mean, but we can't prove it. It's like the whole thing with the crystal to his head, with the weird creature standing in the bedroom both him and his wife saw.
I found that story fascinating.
Yeah.
I loved it.
I really think Ritzman's got something attached to him though that's doing this. To
This
him
could
or
be.
whatever.
It could be. But I mean, the thing is it projecting from him or is it coming from an other?
Yeah.
Maybe it's both.
And it could be both. It could be that the other needs us to manifest.
I think that's the way it is in my situation. I think that there's something following me, attached to me, but I also feel like a lot of it comes from me and my daughter.
Yeah.
He was the one that got the idea in my head of when I remember him specifically. I was interviewing him, or I was on his show or mine, and he was the one that told me, he's like, if you're into this stuff, don't get into it. But if you are, be aware that when you poke this stuff, sometimes
Yeah.
it'll poke back,
Yeah.
and you
Oh,
might
yeah.
not like what you get.
And I actually found him through your show. I was not aware of him. I had never heard his show. What was it?
He had Paratopia.
Paratopia, yeah.
I can't remember the one he had before that. They had a couple of different shows together for a while, and then he started back up again. He's an odd bird, and I can understand why. He gets into it really intensely, then he gets out and he gets really. But he's like, there's a pattern when you have people that have these kinds of experiences on a regular basis. He fits into a pattern where these people that have this happen are usually fiercely creative people, or they become fiercely creative people. And Jeff is very, very creative. Jeff is always building guitars or doing artwork.
Yeah,
He designed our
yeah.
logo for my show, the one with Archie
Well,
sitting there, the gas mask.
He
and all
designed the logo for the car logo.
Yeah.
And the Ghost Ship logo. He did two for me.
that. He's really good at what he does, but he's also very driven by this
Yes.
stuff.
Yep.
On a level
And Iron Maiden.
Yes.
And Star Wars.
Exactly. Well, he out geeks me in Star Wars, absolutely, for sure. He has a Darth Vader outfit.
Yeah.
A full blown Darth Vader outfit, which, props to him.
And he has tour shirts from every Iron Maiden tour.
Absolutely. But like, he's somebody, every time we've had him on, I'll be like, all right, tell me a story. He's always got a story. He's always got something to say. But I really feel that something has attached itself to him. But again, when people have these experiences, there's something that fundamentally changes in people, where they become fiercely creative. They're driven by it's almost a form of autism to a certain degree, if that makes any sense.
I can see that.
So you can tell when there's a meter that goes off. It's like, all right, this person's probably not telling, but then you talk to other people. It's like, yeah, something did happen there to trigger something somewhere. You know, and you can just see it in some of these people.
And when I saw him on your show, you know, I was going back because I had started at a certain point. I'm like, let me go back and listen to some of these older shows, and it's like,
yeah, you're one of the people that's listened to everything we've done.
No, I have not. You've done a lot, and I have not. I have most of them, including a couple you didn't have.
Yeah, you had the original episodes.
Because I downloaded like everything from your server, and then you lost some of the stuff on your server, and you're like, these are gone. I'm like, hang on.
Soraya. Yeah.
Nice.
I remember that. Yeah. Migrated. Yeah.
But I can't remember. Did you do a 2-part with Ritzman?
I've done several 2-parters.
But anyway, I listened to one of them, and I was like, oh my God, I feel connections with this guy. I need to talk to him. Who is this guy? Will he talk to me? And then, you know, like I started talking to him. He's like, this stuff is similar. And I'm like, yes, okay, good. We're on the same wavelength here.
Yeah, he's a good guy. I haven't talked to him in a while. But
I had him on about a month ago talking about Gettysburg because he was doing ghost research there.
Yeah,
and he had some really interesting stuff there
too.
too.
He said he walked in the house and it smelled like cookies, from what I remember.
Yeah, there's also some other stories about something telling him there was underwear under the bed or something as he went to walk out of the room, and he went, "I'm not checking." And then the other woman who was there went, "I'll go look. Oh, look, here's underwear."
He's also a very no BS guy. Like if he sees something, he's got no problem with calling something out.
Oh yeah,
which ticks
absolutely.
a lot of people off.
And yeah, well, because he's good with photographic analysis, and so he's pulled apart various photos and said, "This is fake. Here's why." And other ones he said, "This looks fake, but it's not." He's like, because this can't be faked. Like, this is something that whatever they got something. But the problem with any of this stuff is no matter how many EVPs you get, no matter photos, videos, it doesn't prove anything.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, good, you've proved that something was there. What is it?
Yes.
You know, and how are you going to prove what it is? So, you know, a ghost hunter will say, I got a ghost. It's like, great. How do you know that's a ghost?
Yes.
That's the first thing I tell people that's when, like, when you tell people, you know, I do a podcast and we cover strange stuff. You always have the people that laugh at you. Then they pull you aside and they'll say, well, I've got a story of my own. Or they'll say, hey, I want to get into this stuff. What do I need to do? And the first thing I say is don't get into it. If you're trying to get into it to prove to the world that this stuff is real and exists, don't. Well, if you're going to get into it because you want to explore it for yourself and you're maybe trying to learn something for yourself or whatever, that's a different thing. You know, it's kind of a spiritual journey maybe, but...
To me, I was interested in UFOs and the Bermuda Triangle and all this stuff when I was a kid. And
In Search of, right? You never watched In Search of?
I did watch In Search of. I don't think that's what did it. I think it was books.
Okay.
It was just various books and various like random documentaries and stuff. And, you know, I was really interested in this stuff. And I was like, ooh, I want to become an archaeologist to find Atlantis. I want to become an astronomer to look for UFOs. And then slowly became disillusioned when I realized that's not what they do. Kind of like Jacques Vallée. I mean, he became an astronomer and he wanted to look for UFOs. And they're like, no, we destroy that stuff. You know, it's like, and he's like, what do you mean you destroy that stuff? You know,
that was my mindset growing up.
I was going to say, how did you get into this stuff? What led you here?
I was kind of forced into the paranormal stuff. I was really interested in the cryptid side of things, like Loch Ness, Bigfoot, things like that. But I was a couch explorer. I just sat and watched things and read books, things like that. Yeah. It wasn't anything I ever wanted to go delve into further, but I was forced into the paranormal side when I was forced to live with that. So that's why I focus a lot of my
live
attention.
with that, with you mean your energy and stuff like that.
Yeah, the energy and the explosion of paranormal activity that happened when I was younger.
Yeah.
And that kind of forces you into wanting to understand why you're dealing with these type of things and what is it.
And it sucks because you can't tell anybody about it without them thinking you're nuts.
No, and I didn't have a support system for a really long time.
Yeah.
And that's hard when you're a kid.
Yeah.
And it's, I think... And sadly enough, because of a lot of these paranormal reality shows, people are more comfortable with it now.
Yeah,
I mean, there's still people. There are still people who are going to be like, "There's nothing to this," and it's like, okay, you're welcome. You're welcome to believe that, and you might be right. Who knows? But you know, I've experienced personally too much stuff to say there's nothing to it. I just will immediately say I don't know what it is, but there's something going on.
Right.
And too many people have had too many experiences that are consistent throughout centuries to say there's nothing going on. People are experiencing something. What that is...
Yeah, none of this is new.
Yeah, but the thing is, what that is a big open question. And the problem is there's too many people saying they have the answers without any kind of support for that assertion.
Absolutely.
You know, it's like, these are ghosts. Well, prove it. Well, look at this picture. And it's like, that doesn't prove it's a ghost. Even if it's a legitimate picture of an apparition, you're not proving it's a ghost. It could be a spirit. It could be your mind projecting something.
Jinn. I mean,
exactly.
who knows?
And it could be something that none of us has ever even imagined. And there's, at this point, our technology cannot prove it one way or another.
How does a two-dimensional creature see a four-dimensional creature?
Exactly.
How do you even perceive of something like that?
So, I mean, it may cater to our brain may put a face on it, and that face may then transfer to the electronic equipment.
What did Keel say, that we're owned? He said he thinks
we're property.
Yeah,
No,
we're property.
it wasn't Keel. Was that Keel or was that Fort?
Maybe it was Fort.
I think it was
should
Fort.
know this. Now I feel like an idiot. I should know this stuff.
That he had a sneaking suspicion that we were property. Yeah, I think that was Charles Fort.
Wow.
And, I mean, maybe he's right.
I go
know.
back to War of the Worlds, we would make great pets. That's porno for pyros. Yeah.
All right, we're just about done. Where can people find you, Roejen?
You can find me at projectarchivist.com. Any place you get podcasts, you can find us anywhere. Or just go in and type in Project Archivist. I know I say it wrong. It's supposed to be Archivist, but that's just the way that I say
I like
it.
Archivist.
I like it.
Yeah, it sounds cooler because I say so. But yeah, you can find us. We're also on Facebook. We got a pretty good Facebook group that's been established for a while. We got good people in there. It's a constant stream of weird, strange news stories. So yeah, we've been around. We're going on our 9th year now. We just had episode 300. Which, by the way, before I go, I got to say something. A mutual friend of ours, Timothy Renner, just celebrated episode 100.
That he did.
Of Strange Familiars, and I'm saying it correctly because I know Cutchin's going to be out there listening. He always makes fun when I say it wrong.
What do you say?
I always say familiars, and it's a throwback 'cause when I used to play Dungeons and Dragons when I was a kid. The first time I ever heard it,
Yeah.
my buddies used to say it as familiars. You would get a pet familiar if you were
That's a
Magick
weird
user.
way of saying it.
And it's stuck in my head. I know I say it wrong, so it's actually pronounced familiars.
Yes.
Yeah, Tim just had episode 100,
That he
and he's
did.
a mutual friend of ours, and he's got a great show. And if you're listening to this show or my show and you're not listening to that show, you need to go listen to that show as soon as you're done with this show.
And he was supposed to be here this weekend, too, but he just could not do
Yeah.
it, unfortunately.
And I promised him I would send him a shout out for making it to episode 100 because podcasting is hard. And Tim puts a lot of work
He
into
puts
his
an
show.
enormous amount of work, and he's almost given up a few times, so I'm glad he kept with
Yeah,
it.
so have I, many times.
Yeah, and I ride you about that, too.
About giving up?
Not giving up. Don't give up. Your show is
Well,
awesome.
even if I
Roejen.
did,
love it,
I would
yeah.
eventually be back doing something. I'm sure I would. I wouldn't be gone for real long.
You have a Facebook page for the paranormal stuff?
I do. It's actually it's a variety of paranormal stuff. It's
Yeah.
Uncharted Para-Cryptid Studies, so we study all sides of the paranormal.
Nice.
And me and my sister are also trying to work on getting something together in the future, but we'll keep everybody updated on the Uncharted Para-Cryptid Studies page.
Okay, awesome. I thank you both, and we'll see you next time. You have been listening to Where Did the Road Go? This show is made possible in part from our Patreons, and we thank you and everyone listening for helping us continue this exploration of the strange. You can always find everything Where Did the Road Go related at www.wheredidtheroadgo.com. And thank you so much for your support.